Good evening. Call the meeting to order. We're going to have Troop 229 introduce themselves, and they're to do the Pledge of Allegiance with us. Boys, go ahead. Give your name.
I'm Tyler Komrosky.
I'm Tristan Neal.
I'm Joshua Wilkinson.
I'm Robbie Fetch.
I'm Parker Kellstrom.
Turn around. Are you ready to start? I pledge
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Good job, guys.
Did I hear you guys volunteer to shovel any walks that didn't get shoveled yesterday? Oh, okay. Roll call, please.
Grinberg.
Here.
Gehrig.
Here.
Pepcorn.
Here.
Strand.
Here.
Mahoney.
Here. I suppose, Tony, it's warmer down there. You don't have 9 inches of snow.
I'm walking out back for the weekend, and I get to do my hair blowing up driveway.
Inspections. The city of Fargo has hired a full-time code enforcement inspector who handles a variety of issues. Some of the more common issues include junk vehicles, front yard parking, and dilapidated homes. There are several ways to contact the city to file a complaint. The most common ways to report an issue are through Fargo One app, which allows a person to take and attach a picture, Fargo One 311 link to the main page in the city's website, or call the inspections department directly. If a complaint leaves the contact information, they will receive feedback on their issue. If you see any areas that you think need to be attended to, please contact us. This is something the commission felt strongly about, is have a code enforcement inspector. Library. There are several interesting library programs and events in the next couple of weeks, including a story time and dance event featuring the classic Nutcracker by some of the dancers from the FM Ballet on December 3rd at the main library. A Star Wars lightsaber craft session for teens on December 7th at the main library, and a gingerbread house decorating session for kids on December 12th at the Northport Library and December 15th at the main library. And there's a family holiday concert featuring the Fargo Moorhead Choral Artists on December 14th at the main library. Getting ready for Christmas. Police. Chief Todd and myself made guest appearances last week at the North High School's 25th annual Putnam County Spelling Bee Play. The chief says he is definitely a better speller than me, and he did spell a few more words correctly. However, they finally stumped him and he had to go off the stage. He got the boot. Thanks for Lieutenant Matt Sanders and his son Kaysen, who is a lead in the play, for asking us to be involved. It was a fantastic production and it all had a lot of laughs. I have to say that school has really had a lot of kids that have great talent, and the audience loved to laugh at all the jokes they made. Police. It also is going to do on December 10th, a law enforcement day for the Salvation Army Kettlebell. The police department has traditionally done this along with the other area law enforcement agencies to raise money for the less fortunate people the Salvation Army serves. The fire department will man the Salvation Kettles on December 13th. So whoever you like better, police or fire, that's where you give your money, right, chiefs? We're gonna have a little competition. The police department is also helping with a sock drive for the homeless, and for those who want to contribute a package of socks, there is a box just outside the chief's office at the new location on 25th. Planning and Development Department is seeking input from the community on the Fargo's highest needs as they develop a city's 5-year community development plan. An online survey is available until December 13th, and the survey can be found on the Planning Department's website or the city's social media outlets. The Planning Department will be happy to assist, and also can provide paper or translated copies of the survey. Took the survey. It's interesting what they ask, and I think what we're looking for is some input on the community development plan. I think Commissioner Strand and Commissioner Grinberg are working on that, correct? And it's a good copy. Tonight we're going to see videos of the creative service team that is showing Block 9 topping out celebrations, City Hall West parking lot opening, and road construction update. So that had a picture of the parking lot that next City Hall, and if people want to walk directly into City Hall, they can use that parking lot for any type of public issues. So you don't have to do the widening sidewalk anymore if you'd like. Is there a motion to approve the order of agenda, moving item 14 from the consent agenda to the regular agenda and adding the extra item to the consent agenda to award the bid for the purchase of one Spartan fire pumper truck?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Moved and seconded. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. No motion carried. Is there a motion to approve the minutes of the November 18th, 2019 regular meeting?
So moved. Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
And then is there a motion to approve the consent agenda items 1 through 30, adding extra line to the consent agenda to award the bid for the purchase of one Spartan fire pumper truck?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Strand. Roll call, please.
Greenberg.
Aye.
Strand. Gehrig.
Yes.
Pepcorn.
Aye.
Mahoney.
Aye. Regular agenda, item 31, the use of the Link FM for special events. I think Matt was asked to come back with us with some ideas of what to do in this problem, and you've got a couple different options.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor, Commissioners. Back in October, the MAP Board met. The MAP Board is a group of people between Fargo, Moorhead, West Fargo, Dilworth that get together, kind of oversee the transit operations. With the knowledge that Link FM was likely going to be discontinued in 2020, they did want to recommend looking for some possible alternatives to that service. On November 18th, City Commission held a public hearing to eliminate Link FM effective January 1st of 2020, which City Commission did approve. However, during that public hearing, City Commission did ask staff to come back with some recommendations for special event only service or reduced alternate service hours. So we went back and looked at some of the information, and this is what we came up with. We went through all of the downtown events through Fargo Moorhead for the year of this past 12 months. We were quite surprised to find out how many events actually occur in the downtown area. So we broke them out by month, January through December there. As you can see, July is obviously the heaviest, but September, October have some pretty high event numbers as well. Looking at what it currently would cost us to operate Link FM, total cost for operating this service for all of these events would be around $71,000, give or take. Again, these are just kind of estimates. What we saw mostly with Link is since it was out there 6 days a week, most of these events didn't require extra service or an extra vehicle to be put on them. People would just use the service since it was already there. So by taking away that service, these might be some of the events that come out for requests if we were to do a special event only type service. Looking at large bus options, we did look at, that's what I get for copy and pasting. Moorhead, Fargo downtown events only, right around $19,000, give or take. That is the previous events, and I apologize, Table 3 I didn't put on there. But Table 3 in the memo that you guys have actually outlines all of the special events where we put additional vehicles out on the road for Link FM service for this past year, and that's where that $19,000 price tag comes in, if you will. All downtown events, that's where the $71,000 comes in. And then we also looked at a couple other alternate hours. If we looked at doing just Friday, Saturday, since the majority of all events in the downtown area are Friday, Saturday, sometimes Thursdays, we looked at doing just Friday and Saturday or Thursday, Friday, Saturday. So instead of operating 6 days, we would only operate 3 days or 2 days. All prices are there. It is a route that we split with Moorhead 50-50, so all operating costs are paid 50% by Moorhead, 50% by Fargo. We also took a look at using a smaller cutaway vehicle. If we did that, there would be some cost savings. It's hard to calculate an exact amount. It is quite a bit cheaper to operate a smaller vehicle. However, looking at the numbers, it would save a couple $1,000s a year. So what we came to the conclusion to was, with the way transit is set up in the Fargo-Moorhead area, Our most effective way of operating this service would be to do a consistent schedule, a Thursday, Friday, Saturday, or a Friday, Saturday, year-round, if we wanted to keep the service. Entirely up to Commission City, what you guys want us to do. These are just the options that we had looked at, the information that we came up with. One thing to note is well, two things to note. One is that we would actually recommend changing the hours from 9 a.m. to 9 p.m. since that would cover the majority of the events that occur downtown. The second thing is if we do not have this as part of our regular service or our regular scheduled service, there is an increased cost through our contractor. It's called a special event cost or a special service cost. It's not a huge amount of money, but that is a small factor that's in there as well. Questions?
Question, Commissioner Pipcorn.
Yeah, Mr. Chair, this is for Matt. So how about if can you give us a number for just the street fair? How much would that cost us? And is that a difficult thing for you to do as far as, not being a continuous service? Can you talk about that?
Sure. So we did speak with FTA, excuse me. And long story short, as long as we do not charge a fare for the route, and we do not accept any donations to operate that service, it's not charter service and we can do that. We would want to give as much notice to the public as possible. So if we're talking about an event like Street Fair, with 3 days, 3 buses running, we're probably looking, I'd say maybe around a little less than $5,000, give or take, between fuel, driver services. I'd have to run the exact numbers. And then we would just want that scheduled out in advance.
So just one more question. So then would Moorhead participate in that too, or would that just be us?
That would be entirely up to them. So our agreement currently with Moorhead is they pay 50% of the operating costs right now. However, since we're changing that agreement, they would then have the ability to come in and decide whether or not they wanted to partner with that or not. They are having conversations with their transit manager, Lori Van Beek, who's in the audience tonight, regarding special events as well, possibly looking at doing the 2 or 3 day operation of the route. But I really couldn't tell you if they would guarantee 50% cooperation or not.
Matt, I talked to Mayor Judd, and he's kind of curious what we're going to do, and then they will address it. They also do not have it in their budget, so it would be a budget change. We had in our budget just special events, and I did not have the full budgeted amount in the budget. So it'll be up to the commission what they want to do. Commissioner Strand.
Thank you, Mayor. Matt, I'm glad you acknowledged Lori in the audience. And Lori, maybe I'd ask you if you'd come to the microphone. I'd really like to hear Moorhead's viewpoint on this, separate from ours. If you have advice for us or guidance or advocacy, I'd really welcome it.
Thank you. Moorhead at their meeting on November 12th did express an interest in having some service continue, and definitely would like to see a special event transportation. I did give them an estimated price for street fair, and they were interested in that. They have not yet, of course, made a motion to support or not support, but there was very much comfortable discussion about wanting that service. They do feel that it's still important to the downtown to have that transportation between the two downtowns.
Mr. Gehrig, Commissioner Grinberg, any comments?
Well, I guess I'm open to discussion on a street fair, but beyond that, I'm not convinced this is a service that's widely used, and we need to, as you said, Mayor, it's not in the budget, so unless there's a proposal to specifically do street fairs, I'm going to vote no.
And I did not provide a recommended motion just because this was more of an informational, and I know everyone kind of has their opinion on it, so we left it open more for you guys to discuss. I do plan in 2 weeks coming back with some information regarding the industrial service that we implemented as well, where we might see some cost savings there. So, this might be a bigger discussion. This was more or less just for your guys' input and kind of how staff viewed it.
You guys want to wait till you get that, or do you want to do a motion, John?
I have a question. So Matt and Lori, how soon in your estimation before we have autonomous vehicles running these routes?
Well, I think they're still working on autonomous vehicles to make sure they're safe. Okay. So they're being tested in the communities around us, in the bigger communities like Minneapolis.
So would you, like, few years?
Well, right now, for example, the majority of the technology that I've seen for autonomous vehicles are limited to about a 2-mile radius. Several of our routes go beyond that. So before we would see a fully autonomous type system, I think we would, be a couple decades out. But I think we could probably see in the next 5 to 7 years some implementation of some smaller autonomous vehicles in areas that, we might be able to use them for.
What's the mood of the commission? Commissioner Pepcorn?
Well, Mr. Chair, I'll make a motion. I think that for the street fair, to make a motion for that, that we would continue with that. And then I do think that we should keep in contact with Moorhead, because I think there's this Scandinavian Hemkomst would be another one that I think Moorhead especially would be interested in continuing. And so I think it's good to know that this wasn't going to impact the staff with the whole having to have a continuous thing. And so I think we should, that's my motion, to continue with the street fair for sure, and other potential ones.
So he has option 1 here is Moorhead and Fargo downtown events jointly funded current service. It costs us $9,000.
But that's ongoing, and to me, that's
No,
not.
no, that's just those special events.
So is that correct, Matt?
Yeah, so table 3 outlines the special events that include street fair, the Celtic Festival, Scandinavian.
There's 4 festivals at the Yumcom Center, Unglued.
Yeah, Unglued. They're our highest ridership events. So those are those are the events that we know we're gonna have capacity issues for, and that's what that $9,000 is.
So that was within our budget, and that would be option 1.
All right, then I'll make a motion for option 1, and for Fargo share, $9,484. Is that correct, Matt? That would be that's what it says on there. And so that would be for the main events that we just talked about. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay, I'll make that motion.
I'll outline in table 3.
Is there a second?
I'll second that.
Moved and seconded. Any discussion?
I'd like to have.
Commissioner Strand?
Matt, is this what you'd recommend, or is this a curveball?
Based on the information we got from FTA, the main thing is if, as the city, we want to run this service, we do so without any donations or any charge. We operate the service, we do it out of the city's pocket for the good of the community, and we're good to go. Yep, we just don't want to get into any donation type or sponsorships with this type of service. So what Lori and I had talked about with commission or council going this direction, what we'd like to see is every year during budget, set the events that we're going to be operating for the following year, and set the budget for that, and then those are basically closed at that point, and then we can just advertise those out and give public notice.
Commissioner Pepcorn?
Just a couple comments. So first of all, this was I'm very proud that we tried it, and I'm very proud that we're not keeping it going. It's not being used as much as we had hoped. I think that's a good thing. You try stuff, not everything is gonna get a gold medal, and I think it was worth it. It might have not have been the right timing, and the other thing is autonomous vehicles. So Commissioner Strand and I were in San Antonio, and I rode in the autonomous bus, and 10 years, that might, and this would be a perfect route for an autonomous bus. Like you said, it's not gonna be the main thing, but it will be an auxiliary, and so I don't think it's 10 years away. And so it was a fun adventure riding on the bus. And the interesting thing was they had a gentleman riding with us, and he said, "I don't really need to be here. I'm mostly for the other riders, making them feel safe." Because really the buses, they're ready to go. So it was a very fun experience, and I don't think they're that far away. So it was fun.
Very good. Commissioner Strand again?
Another point to bring into this conversation is prioritizing our needs. And we've recently had a wage increase for our drivers, which was midstream needed to be done. We've also added the industrial park service to our routes, which needed to be done. And those are jobs, and that's just key. We also have Sunday service coming. And before we vote, how's that, will this be impacted at all, or do we not need Sunday events?
Community our size that's growing, Sunday service is inevitable. Comes with a price tag, right? I think our last update was right around $500,000 or something like that to operate the extra 52 days. And that's mainly just because of facility and staffing expansions that are needed to do that. So yeah, I mean, Sunday service will continue to be in our plan, and it's just a matter of when and if the city is able to fund it.
Commissioner Garrick, any comment?
I'm good, thanks.
Any other discussion? Roll call vote, please.
Pepcorn?
Aye.
Strand?
Yes.
Gehrig?
Yes.
Grinberg?
Aye.
Mahoney?
Aye. Go to public hearings, plat of the Blue Water Creek 5th Edition to replat Lot 2, Block 1, Blue Water 4th Edition, including the vacation right-of-way of the northeast corner, its intersection 47th Street, 33rd Avenue South, recommended by the Planning Commission on 7/2/19, and regular meeting 11/18, regular meeting. And Donald, I hope you didn't take pictures just today, so we don't have that snow all over, but Donald Crest to explain.
Thank you, Mayor. I appreciate your concern for our safety here. In fact, these are the pre-snow pictures, so it'll be a little more illustrative of what's actually happening on the site. Good afternoon, good evening, Commissioners. Donald Crest from the Fargo Department of Planning and Development. As the Mayor has stated, we're looking at the Blue Water Creek 5th Edition subdivision. Here's the subject property here. This is 32nd Avenue North and 45th Street. As you know, since this aerial photograph was taken, some additional properties have been developed in here, as well as this property. This is the tire store that's going in that I believe is just about open. And then also on this part of the property here, the applicant is developing an office building, which is going to be their headquarters, as well as I believe some general office building here. And then, as the Mayor stated in the introduction, the vacation of right-of-way is this little corner down here. This was apparently originally going to be a roundabout, but we're not going forward with that being a roundabout. It'll just be a traditional intersection, cross intersection there. So that would be the vacated portion. That's what makes this a major plat, is that there's a vacation to it. Again, these are the pre-snow pictures here. You can see the site here, a couple different perspectives. And you'll notice here, we're going to talk about this in a minute, this is the road here. This is actually a private drive and easement. This is not a dedicated public street. We're going to talk about that in a minute here, Commissioners. So again, you see the site there. These are from earlier this summer. And this is a property zone general commercial, and there is no zone change proposed. This actually was rezoned in the time between the Planning Commission approval and the City Commission approval. So they were going together, but that one's already taken care of. So this is general commercial with a conditional overlay on it. And the conditional overlay does provide some additional design standards, particularly in this case regarding pedestrians. So as we looked at the plat here, this plat proposes dividing the property into 6 lots. And then here is that private driveway you see going around here. And we're getting to have some of these private driveways in commercial areas that aren't dedicated streets, but we're very conscious of them being able to serve the purpose of a street, partly for access for everyone, and also to protection of the pedestrian realm, which is, you know, there's a place to walk and there's sidewalks. Particularly this conditional overlay, as noted in your staff report, does have require separate pedestrian and vehicular circulation systems and an on-site system of pedestrian walkways designed to provide direct access and connections between the buildings and across the streets there. That's listed in your staff report there, between commercial buildings, including pad sites, to walkways on adjacent properties, to adjacent public sidewalks, and to parking areas or parking structures, which makes it more street-like. You know, when you're walking down the street, the street does a lot of things. The street and sidewalk do a lot of things you might not think about during the day. Then the other thing has to do with having access and protecting the city's ability to get in and service utilities and all the things that the city does here. This is on private property now. And as noted in your staff report, the city staff and city attorney have reviewed the existing covenants on the property related to the easements. That is, this easement is created by a private agreement, not by a dedication to the city. These covenants are a private agreement between property owners and as opposed to the conditional overlay, which is part of the zoning ordinance. Staff found it necessary to add one more covenant, as noted in the staff report. We're working with the applicant on finalizing the wording for that with our city attorney. So the recommendation here today is for approval of the plat with the contingency that the approved plat would not be recorded until the covenant is finalized. That's not something that goes to your commission. So that's just something we can work with staff following that. Otherwise, the plat has been reviewed and approved here. So the applicant's representative, I believe, is Mr. Mack here? Oh, Blake? Okay.
Is there one present who wishes to speak? Does Matt want to speak? Or?
Okay.
Anybody else would like to speak in regards to this plat? I'll close public hearing. Don, you want to make a recommendation? Is this your recommendation?
That's the Planning Commission's recommendation, sir, as stated in your staff report and shown on the screen.
Do I have a motion?
I'd make the motion to approve per suggested by Mr. Don.
Is there a second?
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any discussion? Commissioner Strand.
Thank you. Donald, I'm just curious about this private drive.
Yes, sir.
Do we have any expectation how long it remains private? Or I understand occasionally people ask to turn them over to the city?
Well, that is the idea of, we want the covenants to continue to remain private because that's part of our review for that. We would want it to continue, the covenants to maintain it as a private drive far into the future. There is nothing in that intends to, that at a certain time that would be like a sunset that would become dedicated to the city. But that's one of the things we're conscious of, is keeping it as a private drive and keeping it maintained as a private drive, because obviously the maintenance is conducted by the property owners. So that was what our review of the covenants and existing agreements helped support, that the documentation they have is sufficient to do that.
Any other discussion? Roll call.
Mayor?
Oh, Commissioner Garrick.
I'm wondering what the fire chief has to say about the private drive. I know in the past he's had opinions on that.
Fire Chief, you want to come up? He's coming up, Commissioner Garrick, to the podium.
Commissioner Gehrig, as part of, while the chief is coming up here, the one condition we want to add, the covenant we do want to add, has to do with signing that no parking, so that it will not be parked on, so it will maintain, be open as a fire lane at all times, Chief.
Yeah, Chief Dirksen here. One of the issues we always have with the private drives is we get several complaints, especially now that the snow has come. Getting the snow out and the parking and maintaining that always becomes an issue. From time to time, we do get calls in more of the residential neighborhoods with cars parking on the streets, and the streets are generally narrower, and we have trouble getting buses through there. Sometimes we have issues with fire trucks getting them through because of how the people park in those neighborhoods. I'm not a big fan of the private drives, but I know they do serve their purpose, and in a purpose like this, within a commercial area, they may work, but I would never support them in an area of a residential neighborhood.
Is that what you want to address, Commissioner Garrick?
Thank you.
Thank you, Chief.
Yep, sounds good.
Okay, ready to vote? Roll call vote, please.
Grinberg,
Aye.
Pepcorn.
Aye.
Gehrig,
Yes.
Strand,
Yes.
Mahoney.
All right. We have Steve Sprague coming up, going through multiple liquor license issues. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I think this is a record for you, Steve. You want to take them all at once, or?
Yeah, good evening, Mayor and Commissioners. If it's all right with you, I can explain each of these, and we can just do one motion for all 5
Why
liquor
don't we have you
licenses.
explain them all, and then we'll ask for public comment, then we
Sure.
can vote, okay?
That'd be great. So the first one is for Pixel Brewing. They are changing their license classification from a Class Y, which is a brewery taproom license, to a Class CM, which is a microbrew pub license. The CM will allow them to sell other people's beer and not just their own. With the Y, they can only sell their own beer. There are some other things as far as distribution, how they can distribute their product, and those kind of restrictions. But that's the biggest change, is to allow them to sell other people's beer. The second application is for the Pancheros Mexican Restaurant. They have a location transfer. They moved a couple of blocks to the east, and so there's no other issues with that license. It's just a location transfer. Very similar to Steve's Package, which is closing its 4th Street North location and is looking at moving out to Royal Liquors Village West. So that's right next door to the Hornbachers out there at Village West.
So when would Steve's Package close?
I believe the applicant is here, and I think he had said the early part of December. Probably late December.
After Christmas, okay.
The next one is an FA license, which is food and alcohol. It's the Grazi's license. Grazi's has closed for some time and are transferring it to a Mexican restaurant named Plaza Azteca Mexicana, or Restaurantes Mexicanos. And that's going to a new location on 28th Avenue South. And then the final one is Osaka Sushi, and that's a complete ownership change. The prior owner is moving back to China, and the new owner is the person that's been the manager there for quite some time.
Very good. Is there anyone present who wants to speak to any of these license transfers? Is there anyone present who wants to speak? If not, I'll close the public hearing on those transfers and ask for a motion.
I'll move to approve.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion?
Just one real quick one on Steve's. I'm very happy about that. I think that'll be an improvement for the city. That was an area where there was concerns, not necessarily just that location, but I think that is a real positive thing. It's going to be redeveloped in that area, and that will be a positive for the city. And we've kind of worked with the owner, and so I think that's been a positive thing. So thank you for everybody that worked together on that, and I think that's a good thing. Thank you.
I want to thank you, Commissioner Pepcorn, because you did work with the owner, and it looks like a good outcome. We're pleased with this. Any other discussion? Roll call vote, please.
Pepcorn?
Aye.
Grinberg?
Aye.
Gehrig? Strand?
Yes.
Mahoney?
Aye. Item 33, applications for property tax exemption for improvement made to buildings. You have the names and the people. Is there a motion?
I so move.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion? Roll call vote, please.
Pepcorn?
Aye.
Grinberg?
Aye.
Gehrig?
Yes.
Strand?
Yes.
Mahoney?
Aye. We're moving along, because Shelley wants to get home to the Vikings game, so we'll go to item 34. Receive and file proposed four-year capital improvement plan along with comprehensive 2020 CIP plan. Brenda, we're just gonna receive and file, but we're actually gonna vote on it next session, is that correct?
Correct. Tonight, we will be doing our presentation for our four-year CIP. And then over the next 2 weeks, I'll be reaching out, seeing if anyone has any questions, comments, taking those
So if the
comments
commissioners
back.
want to debate with you guys a little bit about moving one project up or doing something different, they have the ability over the next 2 weeks to do this, as well as the public has the ability to reach out and to say, hey, I'd like you to look at this. Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay,
And then
I'll-
we'll be coming back in 2 weeks then.
Very good.
So thank you, Mayor, Commissioners. Tonight, we're pretty excited. We will be presenting on our proposed 2020 CIP, which also includes a proposed four-year CIP. The four-year CIP projects included in those would be arterials, federal aid, and water main replacement projects. And those projects will allow us to communicate with the citizens a lot sooner and let them know what projects they have coming forward. So we're really excited to be moving forward with this proposal. So within the city of Fargo, we have over 500 miles of water mains, which is about half the distance to Frisco, Texas. Of these water mains, 70% are PVC, 17% are asbestos cement, and then 13% are cast iron or ductile iron. On our pavement network, we have nearly 1,400 lane miles of pavement, which is about the distance that Nicholls State will be traveling to Fargo. 55% is asphalt and 45% is concrete. So to put that into the football equivalency, about 10 million square yards of pavement are what we maintain, which is equivalent to 1,500 football fields.
This is Commissioner Pipcorn's portfolio.
So I'd like to start with our historical CIPs. And so what we've done is we've given you the last 4 years, including this year. So those are all of our categories for our capital improvement plan. But then what we do on the bottom is we remove new development, alley, and flood projects. The new developments are completely based on developer requests, and the alleys are petitioned in. So those are projects we really don't have control over. And then also the flood projects are part of our diversion projects now, and so they are all paid by flood sales tax. So as you can see, 2016, we're really typically in that upper 60,000 to lower 70,000. In 2019, you can see that dip. That's the year that we removed all of our water main replacement projects when we went back to that 2013 infrastructure funding policy. So our proposed four-year CIP for 2020 through 2023, we did the same thing. You see each of the categories, the total CIP, and then we remove that new development, the alley paving, and the flood projects, and we're again in that low 60s, mid 60s. 2022, we go down to those upper 40 million, but overall, it's within our funding that we have, and so it all equates at the end. So in our capital improvement plan, this is a summation of the different funding mechanisms we have. On the average for the next 4 years, we're looking at about 29.6 million in special assessments annually average. The 12.41 in the Prairie Dog funding that we will be getting. And then the street sales tax, we have 7 million. And then any of our other funds, which include federal aid, state aid, flood sales tax, our different utilities between traffic and storm sewer, along with the wastewater and water utility. So on average, we've got about 90 million total costs.
We thought it'd be important to talk about how we prioritize our available funds. Like Brenda said, we're fully utilizing Prairie Dog and our sales tax, and with our infrastructure funding policy, then we have to balance how we manage those funds and prioritize our projects. So one of the biggest things we do is maintain our current infrastructure. You see that very heavily in pavement preservation projects, but also in other categories as well. And then we look to maximize the benefits of outside funding, and that's typically federal aid projects. We also want to make those improvements that benefit the most people. Those would typically be the arterial roadway projects. And then we want to also replace our aging infrastructure and help support redevelopment and reduce maintenance costs that other departments see. And those tend to be our water main replacement, street reconstruction projects. So there's a number of factors that go into which which project we program. One of those things is a pavement condition index, which we'll get into in a little bit. And then we also look at the age of infrastructure and the number of water main breaks in certain corridors. And then we also look at things that will be impacted by increase in average daily traffic. Also look at needs for flood control. And then we coordinate quite a bit with Public Works and planning as well. So with Public Works, we're looking at which roadways are problematic and expensive for them to maintain. And then planning, we're looking at where likely redevelopment and infrastructure needs are needed to support that redevelopment. So pavement condition index kind of goes into a different ratings. We update this every 4 years. Company comes in, they do a survey of all of our roadways, look at the cracking and distresses in those pavements, and then each segment, block by block, gets a rating. And so we take that information, we look at our whole system. So you can kind of see going left to right across the top table, you can see what our total network is for ratings. And then you see what arterials are, collectors are, local and alley. And as you see, that number continues to go down as you go right. And that's what we should have, right? So our arterials that get the most traffic should have the best rating, the best quality, and then they do tend to go down. But overall, in our total network is very good. It falls in that range of very good at an 83.66. So now we can just look at what that really means. So this is a snapshot of 7th Avenue North. It's rated at 94, which is excellent. And that's what a typical arterial concrete roadway is in the city of Fargo, is just under a 94. So you can see there's some distress there, but this would fall into that excellent category. This falls into about where we are typically in our network, is right around an 83. This example is on 15th Street South. It would be a very good. Again, you can see there's distress there, but those are types of things that can generally be maintained through mill and overlays, seal coats, more of those lighter treatments like that. As we start getting into these categories, you're starting to, the rehab methods we have to take are much greater than just a thin overlay or a seal coat. This is something we're getting into a pretty heavy mill and overlay, or maybe some patching as well, deep patching. So this is an arterial composite. The average rating in our system is a 66, and this is an example of a roadway that's at a 66. Again, going down to fair to marginal, it might be difficult to see in the picture, but you're starting to see a lot of cracking throughout the roadway. These projects do get very expensive to try to maintain and repair. And again, this is an example of something that's poor. This has met the end of its useful life. We'd really be throwing away money to try to go in there and do really heavy treatments to rehabilitate. Really, this is a candidate for replacement. So we do track, again, working with Public Works, we track every water main break in the city of Fargo. Since 2010 through the end of 2018, there were a little over 400 breaks in the city of Fargo. So every dot on that map represents a break. You can certainly see where most of our infrastructure or our water main breaks are. Everything in red there is cast iron pipe, and that's where we see the majority of our breaks. Then we also, again, working with Public Works, look at what projects are most problematic for them to maintain. And that could be from pavement condition, or it could be from water main breaks. Most of these are due to water main infrastructure quality. So this is 10th Street. This is a project that's programmed for next year. And then again, you see a lot in the downtown. We do have a need to focus in the downtown and address a lot of these concerns. We're happy to say most of these projects that are on the list, we are able to address in the next 4 years in our capital improvement plan. So again, just getting into our pavement preservation projects then. What is pavement preservation? It's the proactive approach of implementing a series of low-cost preventative maintenance treatments, and it's aimed at preserving the investment of our roadway network and extending the life. As we've talked about before, no pavement will last forever, but with these timely applications, we can hopefully extend the life, resulting in an ultimate cost savings. So what we try to do is we typically see about a 40%, in the first 40% of a pavement life, we see about a 15% drop in quality. That's when we want to capture it. That's when we want to do a project. Because in the next 15% of the pavement life, it has about a 40% drop. So $1 spent after 40% of the life would, if we delayed it, would probably be about $8. And so this just kind of shows where we want to capture those to rehabilitate. So it gets into a zone, it starts to fall. We do a project, we pick it up, it's going to start to fall again. And we'll continue to do that until we can't any longer. We won't always be able to just extend the life of a pavement indefinitely. So our pavement preservation projects, we're just showing here a number of repair and rehab projects, seal coat, mill and overlay, and street reconstruction projects for about $8.4 million.
So, excuse me. So as Tom talked about, our federal aid projects, they typically come out of the long-range transportation plan, and those are completed every 5 years by MetroCog. So we just completed the next 5-year long-range transportation plan, and this is a map of what those projects are slated for. And so these are all conceptual. It doesn't mean they're all funded, but these are projects that are on the list that could be funded. And so what we do is we make requests at the end of the year for the next 4 years. So you'll see right now we're funded through 2023. So at the end of this year, we'll be starting to look at our 2024 projects. Oops, excuse me. So the federal funding buckets, there's multiple federal funding buckets that actually will fund all of our different projects. So there's actually about 9 categories. So depending on the projects that we're doing will depend on which funds that we go after. So the requests to the DOT are made 5 years in advance, like I said earlier. Currently, the projects are programmed through 2023. And the 2019 request will be for 2024. So for the 2020 budget for the CIP plan, we have Main Avenue from Broadway to University Drive. Our arterial roadways are very important in our designation of those. For any of those projects to get federal monies from the DOT, they have to be designated as arterial or collector. And so those arterial streets are the ones that you rely on as you move throughout the city. And the city and MetroCog work with the North Dakota DOT on those designations. The DOT does require the official map from the city designating those, as they are the only ones eligible for federal aid. So as we go through the reconstruction of our arterials, there's really just not enough federal monies to support all the arterial reconstruction and construction. And so a lot of those needs are due to city growth, roadway capacity, worn out infrastructure. There might be water or sewer utility needs, flood control needs. And so then we will include some of that funding locally with special assessments, sales tax, and utility funds when those federal monies aren't available and the need is there. So for our 2020 arterial budget, we've got projects along 45th Street, 64th Avenue, and 7th Avenue North. Our flood protection projects are necessary for the proposed in-town 100-year flood elevations with the diversion in place. They are constructed upon completion of necessary property and easement acquisitions, and they are paid by flood sales tax and the state of North Dakota funds. This is the 2020 projects that we're proposing. Not all of these will be constructed in 2020, but we are hoping by the end of the year to have them bid and to have those funds designated to the project. Our storm sewer utility, as we determine those projects, we work with Public Works that does the storm sewer system televising. So they go through and video all of our storm sewers, so we're able to see where there are issues. Those go into rehabilitation projects. So we work very closely with Public Works. They'll identify areas that they're seeing in need of rehabilitation. We look at the street and structure failures from the televising. So one of these areas that we have determined is south of 13th Avenue and west of 25th Street. Around the Cashwise area, we've seen multiple failures within the structures that we need to go in and have a project. We also work with Public Works on the outfall repairs, minor drain repairs, lift station rehabilitation, reconstruction, and then we also have our storm sewer hydraulic modeling. We also look at, in 2011, we did a comprehensive lift station evaluation report, and that identifies the projects that we want to be scheduling out. We also have a 5-year lift station capital improvement plan that helps determine our projects. And then we also have our storm sewer network master planning and the south side for drain 27 and drain 53. And then we also have the evaluation of our utility fee. So for 2020, we've got just 2 projects on the storm sewer. We have the local neighborhood rehabilitation and then some lift station repairs. For our traffic signal and streetlights, the traffic signal projects are to keep the existing components running or to modify to operate differently. So currently we've been working, they've been replacing all the signal heads with LEDs, and those need to be replaced every 10 years, so they schedule that in. And then we also have the new operations of the flashing yellow left turn arrows that become available to improve the traffic flows. We also have new traffic signals or crosswalk devices that are installed occasionally throughout the city. So there you have the 2020 proposed project lists for the traffic and streetlight projects. So we're still working on building out our unlit parts of the city. And so we're hoping probably within the next 2 years, all of the city of Fargo will have streetlights. Next is our new development projects. The projects that you see in green are the ones where we've already received requests for infrastructure in 2020, and the other 2 are projects that we anticipate coming in at some point for the next year. Our alley paving projects, we've received 4 requests to date for alley paving projects, and those are the ones you see right there. You know, when we have wet years, we tend to see an increase in those requests with the gravel alleys. And so that's always a great thing to get those replaced with concrete and make some improvements there. Our sidewalk projects, we're doing things a little bit different this year. We're splitting them up on, it used to be new and reconstruction. Now we're doing a north side and a south side. And those are determined by complaints that we receive and also compliance. And then we have our miscellaneous projects. Those are the tree planting, water service lowering. We have a sewer service lining. And then we also do work, some of our larger projects will bring in a public information coordinator. So I wanted to go through some of our projects that we're looking at for our 4-year CIP. So in 2021, you'll see the list of projects that we're tagging for that year for construction. So we're specifying our federal aid projects, our water main and street reconstruction projects, and our arterial roadway projects. And then in 2022, same thing. Our federal aid, we've got program for 32nd Avenue South from 32nd to 22nd Street. We have a couple of water main replacement projects that year. And then our arterial roadway is we'd like to start getting into 4th Street north of Main Avenue. In 2023, we'll be working back on 52nd Avenue right over the Cheyenne Bridge. We'll be completing that section of 52nd Avenue. And then Main Avenue from 25th Street West, that's programmed. And then we will be doing 3 different water main replacement projects that year, along with extending 4th Street North. That ends our presentation. I'd entertain any questions. Otherwise, like I had said, I'll be reaching out, asking if you guys have any questions, comments, just taking all that information back with us and then taking a look at the CIP and coming back in a couple of weeks, hopefully, to get an approved CIP.
Any questions for the commissioners? Commissioner Pepcorn.
Just a couple quick questions, Mr. Chair. One of them on the second slide where it talks about 17% of the water mains are asbestos cement and then 13% are iron. Are those mostly in the downtown, and are those kind of the first ones to be replaced? Sorry to make you go back to this very fun.
So if we go to our water main break maps, we can kind of see those here. So what's shown in orange is asbestos cement. So you can see there is quite a bit up north, kind of along that band of 32nd Avenue North. And then again, downtown, you can see kind of on the fringe, there is some stuff west of the downtown that's asbestos cement, but most of our cast iron is kind of in that core neighborhood area.
So would you say, is that that's where most of the issues are, and is that on the, in the next few years to be replaced?
So we try to. We've been replacing about 2.5 miles per year. I think we have about 22 miles of cast iron remaining yet. We do prioritize those because that's where we're currently seeing most of our breaks. But we still have a lot of years remaining. I think actually, now that I'm thinking about it, I think it's about 44 miles of cast iron water main that we have. But so there's still a lot of years to replace what we have in the ground. But we do prioritize cast iron first, typically.
Then just one more, if you don't mind. So that, to me, this is available to the public, and to me, there's one that shows the projects for the next 5 years. And so I think for the public, if you want to know what's possibly going to happen, that is a good slide to look at, because it kind of summarizes all the different projects in the future. And I think if you have any questions, to contact us, and obviously at the next meeting, if there's anybody that wants to make comments, we will welcome that. So thank you. That's it for me.
Mr. Grinberg.
This may be a question more for Kent. When will we deploy the new notifications to, particularly in reconstruction neighborhoods, with full disclosure of all sources of payment? Does that begin in 2020?
I think he's thinking Brenda can answer that.
So as we in 2020, we'll start putting out new notices that talk about all the funding mechanisms. So we'll be incorporating all those things from the task force into our notices for this coming year's projects.
So that will, estimated cost as well as the total list of.
Correct.
And it will outline where the funding sources are.
Correct. We'll be adding that outline of, because typically what you would get previously was an estimated assessment, but not the total cost of the project and all the funding sources. So we're going to include a lot of those additional items in that also.
And one would assume we will not use Prairie Dog, we'll use state funds. So.
Oh, yeah.
Mr. Strand.
Thank you, Mayor. I like these moments where I can learn. So the questions I'm going to ask are really for me to learn. And they might seem simple, but when you're talking pavement conditions and road conditions and concrete versus cement or concrete versus pavement, I'm just curious, a couple things. Where are we going in the future? Will there be less concrete? Will there be more? And then I'm curious about the things we do that affect the lifespan of these road surfaces. Weight restrictions, speed, what we do to brines or salt, what we do to treat the roads in winter especially. How does that look, generally speaking, going forward? What will we see? Or are there things we should consider doing that will also give us longer lifespans besides just the construction?
So again, we summarize here about 55% of our network is asphalt. Most of our local roadways are asphalt. Collectors become a fairly good mix, and then most of our arterials are concrete. And part of that is it goes back probably somewhat on preference of previous city engineers, but ultimately it's worked really well for us to be able to maintain that high quality concrete pavement on our arterials. There's a lot of factors that go into what material we select. We do typically look at, certainly if it's questionable, long-term life cycle cost, and we program that out and make selections that way many times. But typically we have found that our arterials are going to be concrete, our collectors are either asphalt or concrete, and our locals are going to be asphalt. And again, that part of that plays into what our contractors are capable of doing here in town, because we couldn't do everything concrete because we don't have the capacity within our contractors to do that, and likewise we couldn't do everything asphalt. There are certain things that do affect pavement life. Absolutely, salting and brining do play a role. I think our Public Works Department is very conscientious of that and apply it at appropriate rates. We don't see a lot of joint issues that could come about from that, or surface issues that would come about from that. We do, of course, restrict our spring loads. That's when most of the damage does happen to roadways. And then ultimately, we try to estimate the type of loading that's going to happen on a roadway, and then design the pavement depths to support that long term, so that we can get a roadway to last the term that we want it to last.
My other question, and thank you, it's good for me to just get a grasp of these topics. When we have so much cast iron water mains, and I'm learning, in our infrastructure, and I know we have a new water plant, but how at risk are folks with that old infrastructure, so we don't have a Flint, Michigan here, with contaminated pipes and infrastructure that carries good water to the people?
I don't believe iron is a big issue, but we do still have a lot of lead services out there. I know it's something that Troy is very mindful of at the water plant, so there is a program where we go out and randomly check. We take samples from households that have lead services and test those throughout the city throughout the year. And then we also manage the pH level of the water that comes out of our plant. It stays at an alkaline level, I believe. That helps create a barrier, kind of a coating on cast iron and lead lines to help protect people from that. And so again, that's something that's constantly being looked at by our water plant.
We don't have the emergency Flint had, John, and that news came out. They went back and checked all the things we do, and it's as Tom says, we do check the levels in certain areas of the community and be very sure that we're not toxic in any way.
That's good to know.
Yep. Any other questions? Commissioner Garrick, do you have any questions?
Good, thanks.
Okay, so we're going to receive and file. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Any other discussion? Roll call vote, please.
Greenberg.
Aye.
Pepcorn. Strand.
Yes.
Gehrig. Mahoney.
Aye. Tony, your yeses are very short, so, but it's nice to see you doing yeses. Thank you. Bid award for consulting services for Core Neighborhoods Master Plan, item 14.
Good evening, Commissioners. In front of you tonight is a request to approve or authorize approval of the Core Neighborhood Master Plan scope of work and contract. And in your packet, we have the contract. We have a couple slides to answer any questions, but we are excited about, it was accidentally put on the consent agenda. This normally would have been on the main primary agenda. And we are excited about this process. As you know, we've been talking about this for quite a while. The last 6 months have been dialogue between the Planning Commission, Community Development Committee, and the public, as well as you and the City Commission. We had about 13 applications. We interviewed 3 firms. Those interviews were open to the public. We had a few members of the neighborhood show to those meetings. And CZB out of Alexandria, Virginia was the selected company. The rest of these are just really to answer any of your questions. But a little bit about how the scope of work will be handled is what we're excited about for this firm is there will be a strong housing focus, and they begin their work by doing a parcel by parcel visual tour throughout the entire city of Fargo. And that way there's like a baseline of information to compare neighborhoods to neighborhoods and start to look for some trends and analysis, especially as we hear conversations about, quality of neighborhoods, blight, trends, conditions. But then also looking at both, each of the companies that came to us had different proposals on how they would approach this project. This project company, our proposal had a wide spectrum of stakeholder involvement. We're really excited about that. So we're looking at 4 primary committees, a project steering committee overall, as well as a north side, midtown, and south side sub-area committees. So looking at a total of 50 to 60 volunteers that will be kind of soon reaching out into the public for those interests of people that want to be part of this. Looking at a land use plan that would be for all the neighborhoods, as well as recommendations for individual neighborhoods. And so what we're excited about that is not only are there going to be a neighborhood by neighborhood specific recommendations, but overall master plans for the boundary overall. Will be a full year-long activity with kickoff in hopefully in February, and then a midsummer activity as well as an end of year fall activity. So we do see a lot of deliverables as part of this project. So we're going to be working with 9 individual neighborhoods. So we're looking at 9 implementation briefs with each of those neighborhoods, as well as 3 high-level area plans and a lot of stakeholder independent interviews, implementation toolkits, really looking at our resources that we have for influence in those neighborhoods and impacts. And so with that, I'd be glad to answer any questions and walk through the process in any more detail that you would request.
Mr. Greenberg?
Well, thank you, Mr. Chairman. And Nicole, as noted, accidentally got on the consent agenda, and it's too important of a topic for us just to place on the consent, so thank you for helping me catch that, and Commissioner Strand as well. The 3 of us in particular with others that were on the search committee, selection committee, I'm fully immersed in this, but I felt as well when we talked last week that this should have an opportunity to be vetted so the public can hear the next steps. I see Mr. Enochson's in the room. He's passionate and worked hard about neighborhood preservation, and I'm really excited about the involvement that I think we said at the Brown Bag, John, on this topic, hoping for a bottom-up approach to this model. And we had a rigorous debate on selection in the selection committee. But I'm really excited of the firm that we selected, and I expect good things to come. And also wrapping this up before the next legislative session will be beneficial to citizens.
Any other comments? Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Discussion? Roll call vote, please.
Strand,
Yes.
Grinberg.
Aye.
Gehrig,
Yes.
Pepcorn. Mahoney.
Aye. I've asked Ben Dow to give a report tonight just because they got hammered this weekend, 9 inches of snow. Guys have been working 72 hours, and they're going to clean downtown tonight, but there's reasons for what things happen. And apparently we're growing as a city. You said if you had double the trucks, you could do it in 12 hours? Or?
Absolutely. Trucks and people. No, we started preparing for this a week ago, just like everybody else did. As we prepared, you could see right before the Thanksgiving, we did an anti-ice treatment, a brine treatment to the roads because we thought the storm might move in Thursday night into Friday. It delayed as it came over the Rockies, slowed down, and we didn't see it till Saturday morning, really. I mean, we thought we had full crews in Friday night in preparation for it. 21 of our operators came in. We did some additional work to get our bridge decks ready. As we moved into Saturday, about 8 o'clock it started snowing. We started plowing about 10 a.m. that morning. We plowed all the way through all day Saturday, all night Sunday, into Sunday morning. We actually only had about 4.5 inches when I went home on Saturday night. Of course, like everybody else, woke up Sunday morning, opened the drapes, and went, whoa, we got a lot more snow. So we got about 5 more inches of snow and about 33-mile-an-hour winds during the overnight. So when it looked like we didn't do anything all day Sunday or overnight, Saturday to Sunday, it was because we were fighting to keep our roads open during the overnight. We started plowing our residentials. We let our primaries, our arterial roads kind of sit because we had to get into the residentials. We hit the residentials about 7 a.m. on Sunday morning. Usually takes us 12 to 17 hours to get the residentials done. We have about 500 miles of residential roads, about 197 miles of arterial roads we have to clear. And so with our 22 to 24 pieces of equipment, it's about 33 miles per zone. We broke up into 15 zones, and that's how we've managed.
So it's not true that north gets it first, south gets it second?
No, we've had, in order to accommodate the growth that we've seen over the years, we've had to take and add some extra miles and track some trucks and equipment out of the north side and spread it out to the south side a little bit. So we broke the zones up into an even 30 to 33 miles, and we have 15 of them within the city. Of course, the south side generally takes longer than the north side, dealing with the wind and what we see there. We can see areas that typically on the north side, same miles will take us 8 hours. It'll take us 12 hours on the south side. So some of the challenges we faced, temperatures were right there, right at freezing. So we got a nice ice bond. It slowed our trucks down or slowed our equipment down. I operated for about 8 hours on Sunday. I'm just trying to help out. And it was one of the worst conditions I've seen since my operation days started in 1996 with the snowpack underneath. We just couldn't get traction to get moving. The snow was heavy, it had a lot of moisture in it, and so we struggled. I mean, I'm not gonna lie, I'm not gonna anything else. The residents know we struggled, but this is what we worked with every piece of equipment we had, including myself out operating on Sunday.
Thank you. I want to give them a round of applause for all their hard work.
If you have any questions, I'm always open, and
but you still get the emails and phone calls, right? Because my driveway is plugged up.
There's a lot of love for me right now out there, but I appreciate the residents that do take the time and send in and say thank you. We do go get those as well. We have some great people in this city that help us out and do appreciate us.
Mr. Strand.
Thank you. And Ben, you do a great job communicating to the public. When we do hear from folks, you're on it and you're responding to them, and it's very personal. And they get it that you're interacting with them. Remind me, if you would, the snow emergency discussion, or what policies are implemented this year relative to streets and parking and cleaning of the streets? Because weren't there changes, and we should?
We have not made the changes. Nancy and I are currently working on them. We're rewriting a whole new ordinance right now to bring forward to declare a snow emergency, which would require all the parking evacuated upon our streets when we have 4 inches or more, based on a declaration made by the mayor. So that's one of the biggest things that'll change in some of these areas is if we have 4 inches of snow, we look like we're going to get a storm like we had this weekend. I'd work with the mayor, city administrator, and we would decide, hey, do we need to make a declaration to remove all parking from city streets? There will be a fine that comes with that if they are parked on the street. That's how we're handling it. We do not have the capacity to tow all the vehicles off, but this will be something we will work through. We're not going to come out swinging the bat and really ramp it up with people. This is change, and this is going to take time. This isn't a one-time event, and it's going to be in place. We're going to change the ordinance. You'll see it in front of you hopefully in the next month or so, and then we're going to work on some other stuff with parking regulations as the year goes on.
So as a follow-up,
Mr. Greenberg?
similar to Minneapolis-St. Paul's ordinance then, I believe.
That is absolutely correct. That's what we're moving towards.
And any guesstimate on a snow emergency and street declaration in a 100% perfect world, what that would reduce as far as speed of getting the streets cleared? Because one would think that the congestion is a huge obstacle with a major snowfall.
Different times, different snow events. It's hard to put a number on that. I'd be really reaching to try and put a number on it. This event, of course, we didn't have college in session. A lot of kids were coming back, so it wouldn't have affected this one. But some of the events we had last year we would have shaved hours off. I mean, multiple hours off our time. And our accidents. I tell you the truth, every event last year, we had at least 2 to 3 accidents where we bumped parked cars and stuff.
Very good. Thanks, Ben, for coming up. Is there a motion to adjourn? That wasn't moved to the consent.
It was on the consent.
I move to adjourn.
Second, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
We're adjourned. Tony, stay warm.
Very well done.